Hello, everybody. It's Argent, and I'm here with my co-host Serp Kerp. So we're going to be talking about the whole lockdown, the movement against opposing the lockdown, and like what we think the long-term ramifications are. Because both of us, I think, are pretty worried about what's going to come out of this. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. And also, like, I've been kind of holding off doing a video on this, like the lockdown and the counter response to it, because I know I'm playing against demographics here, and given what a lot of people have been posting on my videos, I know I'm going to take a lot of crap for it. But yeah, so maybe, Surf, if you just want to start off, what do you think of the whole? First off, do you think the lockdown is necessary?
Absolutely. I think that the lockdown is far lighter than it needs to be. For instance, in Montana, essential businesses like golf, golf courses are still open.
What
It's
golf?
pretty
Wait,
essential business.
golf courses are still open?
Yeah, golf in Montana, all the golf courses are still open. So I remember the governor said restaurants need to close, and then I think most of the churches voluntarily closed.
Mm-hmm.
And like restaurant lobbies need to close, and then like movie theaters need to close, and then he declared the stay-at-home order would basically meant that gyms. Well, I think he closed gyms slightly before the stay-at-home order. Then he put the stay-at-home order, which closed hairdressers, barbershops, and like bookstores, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So like 60 to 70% of the businesses are at least some essential function right now, including golf
Is
courses, which are
GameStop still open?
um I could drive by and see if it's still open. I
Because
assume they
I'm
didn't
kind of
make a cut.
I'm kind of curious.
Well,
Because
the GameStop was lobbying to be considered an essential business. For instance, like my definition of essential business is grocery stores, gas stations,
pharmacies.
utilities, utilities, pharmacies. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Montana's definition is like golf courses and lawyers' offices, and
Lawyers' offices.
yes. So my dad is a lawyer and he's still working.
That's hot.
Yep. So hardware stores definitely not an essential business. Important business, but not essential. But apparently they are essential. So
They're
whatever
still,
you
I
can
think,
lobby, I guess.
they're still open in Ontario. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Um, Most restaurants are still open in Ontario.
Hey,
So
guess what?
what?
Guess what? Breaking news. New outbreak in North Dakota. 110 people associated with a wind turbine manufacturing plant in Grand Forks have tested positive. And this is a growing trend. Essential businesses, essential factory businesses, such as this
How
wind
is a
turbine
wind
manufacturing
turbine
plant.
an essential business?
I don't know, lobbying. So
Okay.
anyway, so this essential business has been super spreading occurred, and now the business is going to be shut down. And this is happening in like a lot of meat packing places, and I can understand meat packing being essential.
Mm-hmm.
But what's generally happening is all these factories where all these people are gathering to work in their essential businesses are turning into sites of super spreading. But I guess we gotta open it up. Boomers rise up.
Okay, we'll get into that in a second. It's so in general, would you say, because from what I can determine, at least in Canada, as it seems like social distancing, the lockdown has been at least fairly effective. Like it's not spreading particularly quickly here, I don't think, anymore. It's going to be a really long go, but it seems like lockdown and social distancing does at least somewhat reduce the spread. Well, at least compared to like not doing anything.
It's slowing the spread so the hospitals can run instead of breaking down and all the nurses dying,
Right.
basically.
Mm-hmm. So are all the states even on like a lockdown at the moment?
No, there are some states that have nothing essentially.
Right. So wind turbine factory. So produce not even producing power, but producing something that maybe in a year will be used to produce power is an essential business.
I mean, golf courses are essential, dude.
Uh huh. So it's like it's a joke. I mean, I guess closing some is better than closing nothing. Like, what are the guidelines they're issuing? Because in Canada, it's 2 meters, and they've started to
It's
enforce
two
it with.
meters here.
Okay, they started to
It's not
enforce it with the
enforced at
police.
all.
Okay,
It's not enforced whatsoever
have they
here.
closed public parks there?
No.
Because all public parks are closed in Canada, at least the like jungle gyms and stuff. Although there is still a lot of people who tear down the caution tape and use them anyways, um, which is a problem. So it's like has is there an okay of the like developed countries? I don't think it's spread nearly as quickly in any other country as it did in the maybe Italy
Well,
per
isn't the
capita.
United States confirmed is at 660 to 700,000 right now?
BNO has it at 734,000.
Okay, so over 700,000, which means very, very mild plateauing.
I mean, it
And
went up by.
because it's beginning, very, very beginning of plateauing, that means that everything's over. Open it up. Boomers rise up.
Is it like, but is it even plateauing, or is it just like getting rate? Because this thing kind of comes in waves, doesn't it?
I think it's very like New York is beginning to plateau.
Let me see how many infected there are in New York. Um, because wasn't New York State like almost collapsing? Okay,
Yes.
New York has 250,000 cases. Um, and
Okay, so can I read off the states that aren't at full stay-at-home orders?
sure,
Um, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky, and I think Massachusetts there.
Massachusetts, really?
Yeah. I mean, I can give you the map. There's a
Uh,
map on Wikipedia.
oh, sure, I'll look that up and put that on screen maybe. Um, but like the thing I didn't get, and maybe okay, so things are bad in the U.S. I don't think it's gonna plateau because like this is kind of like what would you call it, the prisoner's dilemma or tragedy of the commons or just something like that. Where in order for a quarantine to work, everybody needs to get on board and adopt similar measures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in Canada, all the provinces agreed to a common set of measures along with the federal government, and so everybody's like abiding by it. Whereas like I does it like I don't know how much it really
Here, I
helps.
have a Wikipedia page open for definite. So, city by city, South Dakota non-statewide, Utah city by city, Wyoming city by city, Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota all do not have stay-at-home orders. Oklahoma has a partial optional stay-at-home order.
What does that even
Massachusetts
mean?
partial optional. Kentucky. These are advised stay-at-home orders. Kentucky advised. Massachusetts advised. Um, I mean, you can look at this and look at like South Dakota has bars and restaurants still open. Um, non-essential retail stores are open in South Dakota, what Nebraska and Wyoming, and then there's like regional restrictions in a few other states. Um, here and daycares, which are extremely dangerous, are still open in Missouri, Georgia, Mississippi, and
I
Kansas.
can't think of anything more dangerous than daycares, to be honest. Because you got like kids, and kids don't exactly have the best personal hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. The whole thing like is just insane. Because like I don't think it really like if you're in a state and some cities are doing it and some cities aren't like how I don't think it even really matters if you're doing it at all then because people are still moving from city to city and it's still getting spread. So like it looks like there's only 3 states that have gone to full stay at home or like full lockdown.
Hmm.
And most states have like some kind of baby lockdown. And I'm not sure if other states are, but I know Texas has started to say we're going to start lifting it. Um, Trump has said that they're going to start lifting it federally. Although I don't know how that's even a thing because there was no federal lockdown.
Yeah, the federal government is basically doing nothing.
So it's like, so like I don't get it. So people are. It seems like there's been this new like wave of it's just the flu, bro, over the last like week or two.
So what I've noticed is that, and it makes me feel like I think you did a video on this before when the NPC meme came out.
Uh huh. Oh,
Um,
right wing NPCs.
NPCs and well, they are right wing NPCs, but basically, yeah, 90% of people are NPCs. They don't assume their own opinions and that they act with the herd. Because at my job and with people in my private life, they completely just agreed with the herd on this all the time. There are people that would say it's a major threat. Then a week later, they would say it's just the flu. Then a week later, they weren't like they lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would violently rant about how it's just the flu for like days on end, multiple times a day. And it didn't turn out to be just the flu. Like they got really angry and would like yell at people it's just the flu.
Yeah, like you said, people would harass you in real life for wearing a mask.
Yes. Oh, I got kicked out of a grocery store for wearing a mask about a month ago.
Oh, they actually kicked you out?
Yeah, they threatened to kick me out of a grocery store for wearing a mask.
Because it was upsetting the other shoppers or something?
Yes. Yeah, and the employees.
So, yeah, so like it just seems like it kind of came out of nowhere. And it's really weird because, like, the number, like, the US, like, what is it, like, um, it's not quite at like a third of a percent. When it reaches a million, it'll be a third of a percent. But like a substantial portion of the American population have this thing now. And this is coronavirus, so we have no idea. There could be like another 2 or 3 million people who have it.
And
Uh,
it's a we don't know if it's actually an autoimmune disease or if it's a pneumonia disease. Because there's actually multiple researchers that are claiming that this is not a pneumonia disease and a pneumonia is a secondary symptom and it's primarily an autoimmune disease, which would lead into it actually being a Chinese bioweapon.
mhm.
Multiple researchers at this point have described it as an autoimmune disease.
So it's like the fatality rate in the U.S. is I think at 5%, and I expect it to go up.
Hmm.
I'd imagine America might eventually have one of the higher fatality rates because of how unhealthy Americans are. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think if this goes on without being broken, we're gonna see like 5 to 10 million Americans dead.
so like here's the other thing just about the whole kind of process is like when people say it's just the flu, bro, not that many people died. Like I think there's like in Canada, there's probably going to be some like Monday morning quarterback or something where they're like, well, not that many people died, so the lockdown was unnecessary. And it's like, well, it's kind of hard to determine how effective it was, but maybe it would have been a much bigger deal if there hadn't have been any kind of public measures to try to stop it.
Well,
Um,
it's like we have a very close friend of ours. It's like Polish aristocrats watching the plague kill everybody around them and being like, nobody's dying in Poland. Obviously, this isn't real. Open it up during the Black Death. So,
Mm-hmm.
It's just like these people, now that it's beginning to be plateaued, it's like, oh, it was just the flu. See, open it up.
I mean, do we even know what the incubation period is? Because I keep
Um,
hearing like different. Like, do we even know anything about this? Because like it seems like how it spreads, what the symptoms are, like how long it incubates. Can you be a fully asymptomatic carrier? Like, does it just not?
yes,
So you
yes. Like, there's probably people that never get symptoms that are carriers. I mean, that's it's a, like part of the problem is that there's likely maybe even a plurality of people that are infected never become carriers. But this could be an autoimmune disease, so you could carry it. It goes out of your system, you get reinfected.
so wait a minute. So I hadn't actually realized that. I thought it just varied in how long it took to show symptoms. So people can just carry it for like months.
Yeah, this has been like established since like January and February.
So I could have gotten it back in
You could
February.
technically have it right now. I could technically have it right now. We go to our parents, we give it to our parents, and we never develop symptoms and they die.
Do the tests even are they even reliable or
Let's say the tests are 90% reliable,
which is
right?
probably higher than what it actually is.
Yeah. So, like, you can't really, unless you have hundreds of millions of tests, you can't open it up.
Uh-huh.
You can't really open it up, right? Or you're going to lead to a spike in hundreds of thousands of people dying and the collapse of the hospital system. And then if you have, so in Montana, because of the mild strain, because Montana has, I think, one of the, like, it's one out of 3,000 right now, or
Mm-hmm.
1 out of 4,000 in Montana right now, or something like that.
Right.
People that are having strokes are not being, they're just told to go home.
So, sorry, what percentage of the strokes are from the virus and what percentage are from stress? Because I could never really understand that.
Well, no, I mean, if you have a stroke, not from the virus, if you have a stroke in Montana, they tell you go home because they do not have the the ability to treat you.
So, where is this meme that all the hospitals are empty coming from?
I don't know.
Because I've heard that all over the place that there's no one in that they're laying off doctors, like no one's in like a hospital.
I have a close friend that's a nurse and she's working 60 hours a week.
I
So it's
forget.
the
She
first.
has some personal protective equipment now, I think.
Yeah, she got a there it was very late until the nurses here got personal and protective equipment. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Uh,
Um
Arctic
like the
warfare.
US military ended up giving the nurses personal protective equipment and now the US military has none.
Did FEMA ever give out any of the stuff they had?
Um uh
Probably not.
I don't know. I think they're still hoarding it.
Um, so let's see here. Yeah, because a lot of people are saying that. So, like in New York, I was watching. Actually, Cuomo gave a good press conference. I forget if it was today or yesterday.
Como almost, I'm sorry, like, you can fucking call me a cuck or whatever. Como almost always gives a good press conference because he'll say things like, people are going to die. This is going to affect the economy.
Well, because
Uh,
he's like Trump is criticizing us for like we built like 4,000 hospital beds and we only used like 800 of them, and it's like he, like okay, so let's get into like Trump, and then maybe we'll talk about this a bit more. So, as you know, and as most of my viewers probably know, I have been like one of the people who has defended Trump the longest. And I've been like, the Democrats are blocking him. The Republicans suck. He's trying to do stuff. He's gotten some things accomplished. I don't defend him after this because I think this is one of the biggest fuck. This is like a Vietnam, like Iraq war tier fuck up.
no, I think this is beyond that. This is like Chernobyl. Like, this is like, uh, going to, like, Napoleon III declaring war on Prussia tier.
Cause
Like,
like,
this is irrevocable bad news.
cause like, I don't get it. The policy has just been all over the map. It's like, oh, I'm hardcore in this. We're gonna ban the flights from China. Oh, we're not gonna do a lockdown. Oh, we're gonna do a lot. I always wanted to do one. Oh, the Democrats are stopping me. Oh no, the Democrat like, because I've heard him say like they're stopping me from doing a lockdown, but also they're stopping us from ending the lockdown. And like, it seems to change on like an hourly basis.
Keep in mind that that's like how he's run his whole presidency, though.
Yeah, but
But it continues through where you can make clear decisions. It
like,
continues in the midst of a crisis and gets worse.
I know, but this is the biggest crisis in American history. Would it be unfair to call this the biggest crisis? I can't think of a bigger one other than maybe the Civil War.
I think this is the biggest crisis since
I
the
think this is
Cuban
bigger
Missile
than the
Crisis.
Great Depression. Or it
Uh, I mean, like, this is like Cuban Missile Crisis, World War II level, kind of.
right. Um so like it's been all is there a federal state of emergency?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so there's a federal state of emergency, but I feel like there's been virtually no direction from the federal government over the course of this whole thing. Like I think they might have issued some guidelines.
Well, keep in mind, everyone I know in my personal life is talking about on end about how they're losing all their rights and how the federal government is taking their rights and how dictatorial the federal government is. The federal government has given up all the rights that everyone expected. Most people expected there to be, say, limited travel between states and the federal government to impose restrictions upon the states that would be uniform and prevent the states from infecting each other. But the federal government has done nothing of that. In fact, the federal government has forfeited all its power and authority to the states in a massive reversal of American history since the Civil War. The federal government is completely abandoned most of its power that it's gained since the U.S. Civil War.
Because isn't this like why
Unbelievable. This is extremely unprecedented.
even if you're a constitutionalist, isn't that the reason the federal government was created for situations like this?
Yes, the federal government exists for situations like preventing epidemics from spreading across the country, for preventing rebellions from overturning the government, from preventing an invasion. Like,
To
like
deal with to
the
manage
federal government
relationships
is there
between
to
states.
defend. The federal government is there to arbitrate between the states and in doing so provide the safety of the citizens of every state. But the federal government has completely abandoned its justification for existing now, which is just this complete reversal of the American history for the last what is that now? 155 years?
It's like it's not like they had to like do FEMA death camps or anything. Like I think all people really wanted was some sort of uniform national regulations. Like it could have all been implemented. Like in Canada, it's not like the federal government is directly occupying any of the provinces. They're coordinating between them. They've all agreed on like a uniform set of regulations, and they're transferring like excess supplies to where it's most needed. But
Okay, so right, we have this wind turbine plant which is super spreading all over North Dakota, right?
mhm.
So Montana has a baby lockdown, North Dakota has nothing. Um, so there are open borders between North Dakota and Montana. All of everything that Montana has done in its baby lockdown can be quickly reversed by its borders, with North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming doing absolutely nothing, having no lockdown. So Montana is going to get its baby lockdown is pointless because it's bordering three states with nothing.
Is the U.S. have complete travel bans on like all other countries, all non-essential
Uh,
travel?
it has large amounts of travel bans. I don't know if it's against every country. I
So
think
like,
it's against the entirety of the European Union, most of the Middle East and China.
mhm.
I don't know if Japan and South Korea are included,
so
and
it,
Mexico as well.
yeah, so it's like we have this retarded like mixture of stuff. I think all this is going to ensure, like, let's pretend nothing changes and we keep going through cycles of baby lockdowns. This is just going to continue indefinitely, isn't it? Like, I can't see like it changing. So now there's like this movement to just end like all the lockdowns, and you're seeing like protests breaking out. I've seen it in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina. What was the other one? Oh, Virginia. And you're getting these protests, some of them armed, demanding an end to the lockdown. And if you look at them, a lot of those people aren't practicing social distancing. They're standing like right next to each other. And it's just like, I don't know. Do you think they'll succeed in politically pressuring some of these states to stop?
No, like, uh, I mean, the states can I mean, isn't Texas just going to repeal their lockdown?
They're
It looks like
openings.
it.
They're doing. I think they're doing curbside deliveries and takeout, maybe. But I don't really trust them to not go further. Um, Argent, you need to read up on American history. During the Great Depression, it cost more to harvest crops than they sold for. It doesn't even compare. I meant more, sorry, Black Monday or whatever. What was it? What was it for the Great Depression? Black Tuesday? I don't remember. That one event. I mean, we'll see how long this shit goes on for. So there's like some three-step plan. Um, and so let's just kind of maybe get into a bit. I know this is not the most organized thing, but so the argument is this is a massive infringement of civil liberties, and that this is the implementation of a police state, and this whole thing is just a giant power grab.
Facade.
It's like the government's exaggerating to gain powers.
What government? The state governments? I guess the state governments, like, what's going on over there? Is there like a race riot breaking out?
No, in Canada, every day at like between 7:30 and 8, everyone bangs pots and cheers as like a sign of solidarity with people who are still working.
Yeah.
Um, so
Anyway, obviously the federal government is not doing anything. Like, I don't know what consensus there is. I mean, what rights are these people losing? They're losing the right to go to a movie theater? But don't all these libertarians believe it's the movie theater's right to like not let them in anyway? I don't understand what right they're losing.
wouldn't a lot of these places have just voluntarily closed anyways?
A lot of them did.
Like I know in Toronto, I'm pretty sure the Catholic Church here just closed masses like
Well,
within,
that's what they did in my diocese.
because like I'm seeing some people like saying like this is an infringement on your freedom of worship. Um, but like I don't get like, okay, so here's just how I think. So like I agree that 9/11 was used as a way for the government to take a bunch of additional powers they didn't have before. Like the Patriot Act created like a police state, which like and all kinds of shit that wasn't there before. Would you agree with that?
No, I
No?
mean,
Oh, okay.
it was already there before.
Okay, well didn't it make it
And the
worse?
Patriot Act is exaggerated.
Oh,
It
it
got
is?
later.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
So,
mean, there's some truth to that narrative.
okay, did a lot of that grow out of 9/11 though, and that we need to stop
There was
terrorism?
a justification for what was already happening by using 9/11.
Right. So I guess like in that case, you can say they didn't let a crisis go to waste. I don't
Yes, they
know,
didn't let a crisis go to waste.
and like in this case, I don't get what additional
They
powers.
completely let the crisis go to waste. In fact, they forfeited their powers and gave it to the states
But
for the
like,
first time in 155
but
years.
let's pretend that they are going to. Um, like, what additional powers is it that they want to grow, that they want to grab?
People like normies in my real life, they'll walk up to me and tell me like, now so because at work they gave us essential. Where if we get pulled over, which has never happened to anybody, for going outside at night, we have like worksheets that say I'm an essential worker.
Mm-hmm.
So the normies would go up to me and you say, "Oh, your paperwork that says you're an essential worker that nobody has ever asked for. That means from now on to move anywhere forever in the United States in the future, you're going to need papers."
Right. I mean, like, let's look at this at a very basic level. Um, okay, at least if we're talking about the lockdown, the government can't maintain a lockdown like this forever. They'll go bankrupt. Like they're like if they did this, like I don't get like if they're gonna maintain this for like indefinitely, like for the next 20 years or whatever. I don't think it's gonna last longer than a year before the country goes like completely bankrupt. You know what I mean? Like I don't get how this is a desirable state of affairs for them. Like using 9/11 to expand like domestic surveillance.
9/11 was like was like an hour, 2 hours.
No, but I mean that was used to like expand like
No, but I meant like the effects of 9/11 were completed on 9/11. The
right
effects of this and their financial consequences are going to continue for months and months.
years,
The
maybe decades.
damage of what this is going to do to the government by keeping it open far outweigh the damage that 9/11 did to the government.
Well, this could. Well, we have no idea how long this crisis is going to last. This could last years. Like,
Hmm.
like the Prime Minister Trudeau and Doug Ford have said, this pandemic could last a year and a half. Like, we might just be in this shit until we get a vaccine. If a vaccine's, is there any question whether or not it's even possible to make a vaccine?
If it's autoimmune, you can't make a vaccine.
So we're just kind of fucked in that case.
You're just kind of fucked. Basically, you would be the only thing you can do if it's autoimmune is you build an entire industrial complex to have testing, and then you do what Korea does for like years and just slowly try to flatten the curve until it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
If it's autoimmune.
So, um, so people are talking about like social conditioning and like to me like this is an actual to me like I think we have to like just be real here for a minute. I think there's a difference between like a manufactured crisis and like an actual crisis. Like I think this is an actual crisis. And I don't see why it's so weird. It's kind of reminds me of like how people say, "Oh, Lincoln suspended the Constitution. He was the worst president in U.S. history because he violated people's civil rights." I mean, like that wasn't like some random bullshit, like some like
Well,
even
Lincoln couldn't have even let the states go because then Maryland would have left and then Washington D.C. would be gone. So then the North would have like devolved into its own states, into like its own nation.
I mean, like if there was gonna be a like if there is a crisis that calls for use of emergency powers, this is kind of it. Like,
Well, I mean, there's a massive historical precedent throughout the history of the United States and every country on Earth of having quarantines.
or just
It's like
yeah.
these things, they happen throughout the entire history of civilization. There has always been legal restrictions during epidemics and pandemics called quarantines. This is not novel. This has always happened. To say that this is unexpected and a grotesque grabbing of your rights is flat out ignorance and denial of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of history.
Like, and once again, I don't get what the government would want to achieve by this. Like, I get you can say maybe they like something like the financial crisis or like global warming is an example I think of a crisis that governments are using to grab power, um, and that NGOs and like those people are using to grab power. But like that's an over time thing. That's not them like shutting down the entire country at once. That's like gradually taking over like regulators and stuff like that. Um, let's see here. So like the people are like saying we need to be allowed to make our own decisions on this. We can be responsible. We just need to end the lockdown and trust Americans to do the right thing, and practice social distancing at their jobs. I don't even know how that's possible in a lot of workplaces.
I don't think it's possible in any workplace
Um,
by
like,
definition.
like, I just, I think maybe like what they should be pushing for more is so in Canada, the federal government is guaranteeing everyone's wages up to 75%.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even imagine how much money that's going to cost. But that was just kind of the decision they went
Well,
to.
I'm at an essential business right now, and our hours are all capped. So people are getting paychecks that are like 60 or 70% of what they were before this happened. And there's no like reassurance to help them.
Right. So I think the federal government in Canada was like, we're just gonna have to pay people salaries. So like, and it's paid to the businesses to not lay them off. So people, I guess, are sitting at home now collecting 75%. That's gonna take us decades to pay off, but that seems like the least bad option. Like all the options kind of suck at the moment. Um, and like I don't know, there's still a lot of businesses that are like closing here and like going out of business. I think maybe that's like the Trump buck thing is kind of a joke. Um, I don't know how you feel about it. It's just like the definition of weak sauce to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Canada, people who have lost their jobs are getting I think 2 grand a month from the federal government for the duration of the crisis. And once again, like it's I get that this is like a fuck ton of money and we're going to be debt like for decades over this, but I mean if there's a time to like blow everything and run up massive debts, this is like the time to blow everything and run up massive debts. um so it's Do you think we're going to see another round of like spike in infections? Because do you think this more comes in waves or?
Uh, I think that, yeah, I mean, Singapore and Japan are spiking, but that's debated right now because uh, I think that they both like buried their numbers, which is showing that like even their success stories are mired in moderate. They're like not fully successful, which means that whatever the United States is doing, which is far worse than what Singapore and Japan are doing, and South Korea is doing, is not enough.
See, I
So
can't.
the idea of opening everything up when Japan, which has done exponentially better than the United States, when Japan is currently experiencing spikes, is obviously idiotic. But
Um, so like, didn't China announce like admit they faked a lot of their number? Because I heard something about that recently.
I don't know if they announce. I mean, I think most intelligence agencies have agreed that China's numbers are completely fictitious, but
I think Iran's are completely fictitious too.
I don't even know. I mean, they're obviously fictitious in the sense that they're not real, but I don't think that they have the capability to measure them.
Wow,
It's not. I think that there's a real number that China has, but I don't. I think that Iran doesn't have a real number.
did Iran like collapse like
Yeah.
politically? Because like the thing is, like, people are saying the media is hyping it up and it's like all panic. I feel like if anything, the media has been massively downplaying this. Like, and even now, like, I feel it's more towards like it's just the flu, bro, than towards this is like the end of days. Um, oh, Moon Runes is saying he thinks China's numbers are more accurate than Japan's.
I think they're both inaccurate.
Um, So, like, if anything, I think the numbers are probably worse in all these countries than
Mhm.
what's being reported. But once again, we don't, a lot of these cases are probably asymptomatic. So, do we know whether or not, so can people get reinfected, or is it just they let people out of the hospital when they start
Well, it's
20?
debated, so it's completely up in the air right now because it's there's growing contingents of researchers and scientists that believe that this is an autoimmune disease
Right.
and that it causes I think it's called cyclone storms or whatever
Mm-hmm.
in the U.S. immune system, and that's what causes the other symptoms and organ failure and lead to death. It attacks the U.S. immune system, makes it most only humans are only able to develop mild immunities, and they can become reinfected to it.
Is it
If that is
instantly
true,
not as bad?
what do you mean?
On the
No, it'd be
subsequent.
worse the second time.
Oh wow.
So it would basically be bouncing off everybody, um, and that they would be spreading it. So if that is true, then it would by definition it'd have to be a biological weapon. Um, if it is an autoimmune disease, the other one is that it's a pathogenic virus, and that it stays in the system for much longer.
Right. I mean, I have like for the first like 3 months of this, I denied it. I think it is. I'm not sure if it's like a bioweapon or not. I do think is an engineered one. It is engineered somehow. I mean, it's too perfect a bioweapon because this is like substantially work. Because like the problem with all like the zombie viruses and all that shit is they have like 100% like kill rate, and it seems to happen in like a matter of hours. And these things would probably just like burn themselves out um,
Hmm.
in like a couple days. But
Like
this,
Ebola.
yeah, but this is like seems well. Ebola didn't bring the world economies to its knees, but
Well,
this is
no, Ebola burns itself out because it kills so many people. That's what I was getting at.
yeah. But this like more than I don't know. Was the I during the Spanish flu they didn't shut everything down, did they?
It worked city by city. It was instead of states, it was municipal based,
Okay, let me see
and
how.
certain cities would shut everything down, and other cities wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Uh okay, so I want to get into Trump now. So what the fuck is he doing?
I don't know. You remember George W. Bush after 9/11?
How he just
Imagine if he got up after 9/11 and he started criticizing like senators and governors he didn't like. How
cuz
do you
like
think that that would have helped the country?
cuz like I think it was a couple days ago he posted like something to the effect of Cuomo should stop bitching and get back to work. And it's like, how is that productive? How is that like helping anything when he like goes on Twitter and just like slams people? And I mean, like some people have called me a cuck over this or like stupid, but he's literally went on Twitter and called for, if not directly for armed insurrections, like in a
Armed
vague,
protests that could lead to huge amounts of violence and civil unrest.
like liberate to me, like that's the language they used when they were like during Operation Overlord, like when you were having like the liberation of Europe or like invading a country. It's like giving the impression that like these states are occupied. And it's like the more bizarre thing is this whole time he's done like this like lame weak sauce, it's a states' rights issue. And now you have him saying like we have to take down states that I don't um like. And like
Can I get into what I think this is going to lead to?
sure, be my guest. I just
Just
wanted to say
talk
something.
about meta right now.
Uh-huh.
So, as I said before, this is the first time in 115 years where the government has forfeited power federally to the states.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Obama, would you say Obama was a pretty ineffective president?
Yes, I think as our friend Torellian said, it seemed like he was more effective because water was going downhill and it happened to
Mhm.
be moving in the same direction as him.
But what is seeming to happen is that you have this crisis which could very well become cataclysmic, and he he is accelerating this crisis, making it more and more cataclysmic, both in terms economically and in life. And he has given up the power of the federal government and let the states take that power. And there's a very real possibility that he is going to be succeeded by a man who has severe late term dementia
Mm-hmm.
at this point now. And Trump probably has early term dementia. So we're looking at a situation where you have an economy which has collapsed. You have hundreds of thousands of people that have died. You have states which are quarreling on their own, doing whatever the fuck they want on their own. And now you have a president who is a corpse for 4 years, who is completely unable to do anything.
Well,
That does not look like a promising future for the United States of the 2020s and 2030s.
well, I mean, Biden, if he won, he could serve. Well, I don't know. I think what they're gonna do is like they'll have him hooked up to like a life. It'll be like Warhammer 40K. He'll like be hooked up to a life support machine to keep him in power longer. Like if Biden becomes president, it's just gonna be like every lobbyist and like hack who just does whatever they fucking want for like.
I don't think it's going to be that. I think if Biden becomes president, there will be no federal government. There will be no executive making any clear decisions. It is you're getting into a situation where you're going to see the federal power significantly decrease. And something else that I mean, if you look at a book like Twilight's Last Gleaming, which I would say you should read, and I have not put up my review of it on my channel, you have in Greer's book, you have a cataclysmic war and the destruction of a carrier fleet, leading to a decline in morale in the U.S. federal government, a massive depression, and then this depression leads to what is a issue that's been kicked down the can repeatedly, but in actuality, in the history of the world, is a massive issue, which is um, federal overspending and the continued disagreement upon of of the Congress and the executive branch to agree upon firm, balanced budgets.
Mhm.
And in that book, the firm balanced budget gets so out of hand that a constitutional committee is drawn to create an amendment to force there to be balanced budgets, but the states are unable to close the constitutional convention which created the amendment, and the constitutional convention ends up lasting for over a year until they propose a referendum to dissolve the federal government. And states then succeed. The federal government, uh, as states are beginning to secede, and this plebiscite becomes as going to go into effect, and it's not going to work, then the military does what the Soviet Union military did, and seals the deal and makes secession universally popular, and the United States dissolves. Um, So you're looking at a situation where you're going to have the federal government gave all its power back to the states. You have this multiple people dissatisfied with the federal government because it led to a situation where hundreds of thousands of people died. You have probably the greatest depression in history, and now you're going to put somebody who's a shambling corpse in charge of that federal government.
Well, I mean, Trump could be a shambling corpse by that point, or his
Even
dementia
if
could
Trump
be.
wins, he could end up becoming a shambling corpse because he is the oldest president in American history as well.
I think he has early stage dementia. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, his supporters will say he's just a massive troll, but I don't see how that, like, makes it better. Like, he's running the country like a fucking, like, pole shit poster. Like, you can't do that. It's like the best I think you can say is that this is like some 40 chess accelerationist like thing, but I, I don't even know. And I mean, it's not just the federal government's doing nothing, but it's like actively fomenting like hatred against itself. Um, and like calling for the like I don't even know. It's bizarre. What like so what was the so do you think what happened with Biden is the Democratic establishment like just wants Biden to be in power so then there'll be a kleptocracy because there'll be no one like at the helm?
I think Robert Fried right here is right that you should point to the end of the Brezhnev
Mm-hmm.
era, and you have these three people that are shambling corpses that have just been in it so long, and there's no one else to put forward. So they're just I don't think see Sam calls it Sam's law, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
Terrellian calls it Sam's law, and it's the idea that you shouldn't. It's a extension of Octum's razor. You should not assume competence or malice or underwater 4D backgammon. You should assume incompetence. You should
Mm-hmm.
always assume incompetence at first. And putting forward Biden is incompetence. It's not like they want to roll him as a puppet. They're picking him because they all agree on him. It doesn't matter if he's just as much as a corpse as Brezhnev was. They want to they're they're putting him as this compromise and throwing him forward. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. This could work like a war. Trump could win re-election.
I'm leaning towards Trump winning re-election.
You think it'll work like a war?
I think it will.
Okay. And I don't know what's going to happen. It could lead to hundreds of thousands of people died. Fuck Trump, and you get a corpse which is unable to do anything.
I'm so you think the Democrats didn't have any plan? It's just Biden was the only person they could agree upon, and
Absolutely, absolutely.
and like and he just had name recognition, so black people voted for him because of Obama, and he won. And because no one is it just because no one knew who any of the younger people were?
Well, they had all of them run simultaneously, and they all choked each other out. And then Biden won one state, so he's the only person to win a state because Antichrist boy, right? They had him they directly cheated and gave him a victory when Sanders clearly won that state. So what was going to happen is Sanders, if they all stayed in, Sanders was going to win all the states in a landslide because he had a plurality. So they all at once, because Biden was the only one to legitimately win a state, the DNC basically said, give it to Biden because they were, at all costs, they couldn't let Sanders win.
So, I mean, I think it's probably a combination. I think they did probably rig the contest against Bernie, um, at least in some cases. But I don't know if they necessarily Biden was initially their guy, or if it was just kind of anybody but Sanders. Like, I don't know if they thought if people thought Pete was gonna like emerge as like this rock star and like win everything, or if they thought like, I honestly, if you had have made me like bet, I thought Julian Castro was gonna win.
I
I
mean, that's what Jared Taylor said. Here, I'm gonna go get a charger. My laptop's about to die.
right. So I don't know. It's just like Trump going on and like doing all the crazy like I don't know. The whole thing is really kind of surreal and disturbing. I'm not saying don't vote for Trump because you don't want Biden and like the people he brings in.
I mean, from a certain point of view, Biden running is a completely incapability. Even if you're a liberal Democrat, you shouldn't vote for Biden because it's too much of a risk to national and global security to put a man with that level of mental state in the presidency. I don't. I think that his mental state being much worse than Trump's, which has been questioned, um, basically makes him as this is a situation. This is a Goldwater situation, right? That Johnson pulled on Goldwater. This is a you cannot put him in the presidency because this man is incapable of writing his name.
Okay, so John Jen Beard is saying ventilators are responsible for over 80% of deaths.
What?
Uh,
I don't even know what he's talking about.
okay. Um so yeah, I just like I don't know. I love that video you did. It's like the greatest thing ever.
Because I didn't want it to be true, but it's true.
Apparently I was
I'm
fucking
intimidated.
wrong. I don't know. This is Biden's winning. Do you think if they I feel like if they had have like run anybody else, they probably would have beaten Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how the debates are going to go?
Is there going to be? Well, we have to ask ourselves: is there going to be debates?
Do you think there's any chance the election could get delayed or canceled?
No, but I think that there might not be debates.
What about like a last minute attempt to bring in online voting?
I don't think that they would because the states are the ones that choose.
Or is it just going to have the lowest turnout in American history?
I think that they could. I think that they're going to switch to paper ballots.
Right. Which they should be using anyways.
Or I mean, to mail-in ballots.
To
Sorry,
mail in
I think they're
okay.
going to be like universal mail-in ballots.
That's a pretty good idea actually. I mean, yeah, I don't know. So I think we've covered most things. Let's just see if anyone in the chat wants to. We'll take a couple questions maybe, because I know a lot of people disagree with us on this one. Um, and yeah, but I don't know. I have no idea how
Arctic
long.
Warfare is asking, what are the geopolitical implications of a Biden presidency? What are Russia and China going to do? Um, I think that I mean, let's assume a Biden presidency leads to a America which is incapable of action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Russia will. I think Russia will have a plebiscite in Nova Russia in that situation and just annex it directly,
Mm-hmm.
and it will officially like incorporate. Now,
Abkhazia and South Ossetia.
yeah, it'll incorporate them as states, and they'll be part of like a Eurasian Union, like as official states.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else China is going to do. I think China will blackmail more countries. Like it will develop, say, a naval base in Sri Lanka or more naval bases in East
That's
Africa.
if China recovers from this.
Hmm. I don't think you're going to see something along the. I don't think China would do, even in a Biden presidency, China is not going to go for Taiwan.
Like,
Um,
but
you could see something like Italy. You could see Italy leaving the European Union. I would say at this point, that's probably going to happen. Russia was very, very close, Sinkman, to balkanizing after the first Chechen War. It was like a hair away. If Putin didn't do what he did, the Russian Federation would have disintegrated after during the second Chechen War.
right. Um, I don't. Doesn't this like we don't know how fucked China is though? Like economically.
I think China's going to have a substantial economic depression, but I don't know. I think China's system is more secure than America's system. I think that Winnie the Pooh is doing a better job than Orange
Because
Man.
at the outset, we all thought like China was totally fucked, and they probably are. But the U.S. is more fucked now.
Yeah.
I think Russia's the least fucked out of the great powers, aren't they?
Japan.
Oh, Japan. Okay, yeah. Um, okay, let me see here. So someone's saying, are you okay with some state governments using this as a way to suspend gun sales, given we might see near future riots due to supply hiccups?
Yeah, guns shouldn't be essential. Gun stores shouldn't be essential. The only thing that should be essential is food, utilities, hospitals, pharmacies. And I mean food in terms of actual grocery stores,
Mm-hmm.
not restaurants. Restaurants are completely unacceptable from my point of view because it's extremely easy to super spread through restaurants.
Something that I noticed, and maybe this is me like taking unfair shots, but I feel like a lot of the people who identify as like national socialists or fascists or like want absolute monarchy are yelling "Ma freedom" over this one.
I mean, and like people NPC.
Right, but like a lot of like the edgy people, because like I remember when I was saying that like I'm happy the Canadian government is pressuring industry to like retool the economy for like supplies. People were like, "What? Well, you want the like a state directed economy?" Like, and I'm like, "Well, kinda. I mean, so I don't know. Neither of us are really as pro Second Amendment as is that wrong for you to say as a lot of people in these circles?
Uh, yeah, I would definitely describe myself that way. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely support gun ownership and self defense, but I don't know. Um, let's see here. What happens if there's a death at one of the protests? Fritz asks. How much of a shit show is that going to be?
I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. I assume that's going to happen.
How much of a disaster is that going to be if that happens? Like, I can't even imagine. Let's see here. I wonder. So I wonder if like you're going to start seeing like interstate power blocks happening, like of like red states and blue states that start to become more important than almost the federal government in some ways.
They start exerting autonomous power over their utilities or something.
Mm-hmm. Um, someone's asking when is the UK going to collapse? I have no idea. They're pretty fucked though, if I remember. Someone's saying people die protests at all time. It makes almost no impact. Yeah, but like two people, like died at like Charlottesville, and it led to like massive like social change.
Oh, I thought you meant I thought you meant somebody dying of coronavirus.
No, no, no. I think they meant if
You mean
like
like a shootout? Oh, that would be catastrophic.
one of
Um,
these like either a stupid cop or one of these people with like assault rifles shoot somebody at one of these like end the lockdown protests.
yeah, I think that would be that would be just as much a turning point as Charlottesville.
So I feel like that's probably going to inevitably happen. Like even if we want to say it's a false flag, okay, well then a false flag could probably possibly happen sometime in the near future. I mean, let's see here. I'm just seeing here. Yeah, I don't see a ton more questions. People are just kind of talking about Tibet for some reason. So I think I'll end it here probably because I think we're both starting to get a bit tired and we've covered the main points. Thank you very much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I'm too forceful right now.
It's okay. So I put a link to Serp Kerp's channel down below. He just put out a very interesting video today, where he talks about the every war the U.S. has fought since. Let me just post a link to that.
Since World War
Since
II.
World War II, that I thought was pretty interesting. I like really long, like podcast style streams like that, so I listen to it. The one funny thing is you keep saying South Korea and North Korea when you're talking about the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I did that on accident.
No, it is kind of a funny Freudian slip. Um,
Oh,
well, I don't know if it's a Freudian slip, but I know I do stuff like that too. But yeah, that was an enjoyable video. So yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
thanks so much for having me. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Stay
Thanks.
safe.
Well, God bless everybody. Have a good night.